child back his side.
Come on, you gotta wake up with a little bit of Scott Walker in your ears. You're gonna have a good time. Hey. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping in, for coming by for our Long Song Saturday, in which today we shall partake in some Tangerine Dream. Which, can I say, there has to be a bar, a brewery, someone out there, a mixologist, who is using Tangerine Dream as their drink mixture. I don't know what it would be. I'm not much of a drinker, not too much, but like, there's something. There has to be. So hey, let's get into the much wanted, the much requested, highly requested Rubicon Tangerine Dream. This is their sixth album, I believe, their sixth studio album, which was released in, I believe, 1975. Let me pull it back up here. 1975. So we've listened to Phaedra, and this is the following album from the band and from the group. So I'm curious to see like what has changed from that ambience, what has developed out of that sound, because Phaedra is a really beautiful ambient album with a lot of different sound effects, and their drive is in their melody and in their use of space, I feel, from just that album, at least that I listened to. So I'm excited to see what Rubicon holds in store for us. I would like to just call out and shout out. I would say call out, but that has kind of a negative connotation to call out someone. I like to shout out the people who recommend me, the tracks, the albums, whatever it is that I cover here on the channel every once in a while when I can. So AK, you had recommended this album. You really like this one, I believe. Thomas Hoffman, as well. Demir, Lubbock. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. Jari Hakala. There's quite a few of you. Lemming, you recommended this album as well. James Dignan. There's like, I mean, honestly, this list goes on. Sometimes there's just like 5 or a few people. Sometimes there's one person. Sometimes there's, I'm scrolling. Like, it's still going. There's actually still a list of people showing up. Even as we talk and even as I continually scroll, I can see on my screen from the side that it is actually still moving. Like, still moving. And I'm back right now 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I'm back right now. I'm even going even further. Even further. 2 years ago, Nick J. Nick J, you recommended this as well. So let's go ahead and listen to the first part, the first side of the album, and we'll talk about it after. I'll lower my microphone just a bit to layer myself underneath the ambience of it all, but I'll probably talk a little bit over it. Hey, let's go. Great way to drop everything out right there. Rubicon sequencer combination. You're not getting away from that. Wasn't the ending of that kind of scary? Some of the noises that they're coming up with. Okay, Tangerine Dream, when it comes to their music and the way that they build their ambience, I think you have to admit that it is just so unique the way that they are filling in these electronic soundscapes with so many different noises, so many different sounds. The production is absolutely amazing in what they're doing with the depth of what they were able to attain. Like I said, 1975, I believe I said this was released. Yep, 1975. Just to kind of think, like, obviously, I personally have no idea how they're creating what they're creating. I can take some stabs and some guesses, but I don't really know. I can just imagine the depths of knowledge that all of the members have in their libraries when it comes to electronic music and the synthesizers, the sequencers, the mellotron, the piano, all these different sounds, but also the manipulation of these sounds, taking away from the traditional way of perhaps playing certain instruments and perhaps what's expected, and morphing it into something completely unexpected, stripping it down to the circuits, to the bones, to the wires, and then rebuilding it from there with minimalist aspirations. The beginning of this track, I really like those warped, disconcerting bells that are ringing and chiming. It's a really interesting way to kind of ring in this new, I don't want to say era, because I can't say that, but this new album, at least. And when I'm thinking of the album name Rubicon, and of course the track's named after such, we, or I should say I, learned the meaning of Rubicon and crossing the Rubicon, the river, and, you know, going past the point of no return is the best way to put that. So I don't know where they got this album title from. I'll have to look into that. But perhaps, if I'm just making an assumption, perhaps they were looking to cross boundaries, to cross a point of no return in their pursuit of this type of music and in creating these extremely creative sounds and things. But the beginning with those bells and those chimes, I think is really cool, a way to kind of set you up. The music builds into this beautiful climax. I didn't look at the time to see when it happened, but the way that it builds up is just so gorgeous, with sprinkles of mellotron and synth. It builds up in this nice culmination, and then I'm guessing maybe about 5 minutes in or so, at some point around that, it just drops it all, strips it bare, and it's like they built up this idea, and then they kind of crumpled the paper, scrapped it, and said, let's start writing again. Let's start scratching up the paper one more time. And they built something completely different from there. And yet, at the end of the track, I feel like they have some sort of callback to that original prelude to the album and to the song, those original few minutes. So, to me, the way that I'm kind of imagining them composing the music, or however they came up with it in their mind before they necessarily put their fingers to keys and synths, is that, like I kind of said, they were kind of drafting an idea, they built it up, they played around with it, and of course it made it here. And then they kind of like said, okay, that's good. Let's build something new from that line, but perhaps include a slight callback to that original draft. I don't know, there's something really cool about the way that it builds up. And then from that middle section, when it breaks down, it builds back up, but this time including that sequencer. And with that sequencer, it includes this nice drive. It naturally just brings about this certain kind of rhythm. So now there's a movement to the music. There's a movement to this movement. And as I said, the mellotron soaked glory that the melodies start to bring in, this kind of Eastern flute clarinet sound that I'm 99% sure is just a synth. Actually, I want to say I'm 99.9% sure he's just playing on the synth, but it sounds like it's emulating a clarinet or some sort of instrument like that. But at that point, words are hard. The way that it builds up in these blissful, like, melodies is just beautiful. And one thing I appreciate about Tangerine Dream and what little I've heard of them is these sounds don't necessarily sound alien. You know? If I'm just to compare Tangerine Dream to another electronic artist, Jean-Michel Jarre, right? His music, it sounds like something completely out of this world. It sounds like something completely alien and foreign. This, while it does have a little bit of a fantasy-like nature in its approach, I feel like it's a little bit more grounded. It relies more so on ambience and space. as compared. So I just think that that's a really cool way to, structure this whole thing, because it's not, well, I guess it is ambient music, but it's a little bit more engaging as well than ambient music. And then near the end, when that sequencer comes in, which, by the way, the sequencer at one point kind of doubles back on itself like an Ouroboros, and it's really cool how they do that. We get some percussion as well. Now, the percussion sounds like slapping a wet noodle. And I actually mean that in a cool way. Like, it's not your typical kind of percussive sound. It sounds very thin, very tinny, very in the back. It sounds like someone was hitting toms, but they pitched them up and they fainted the volume. And once again, like I say, kind of pushed them to the back of the room. So they're there, but they're barely noticeable. And they probably only stay, I want to say, for maybe about a minute or two. Probably 2 to 3 minutes, I would wage. I just think that's really cool, the way that they built up this rhythm, this percussion, and then it's back out. Then you have some, I would imagine, just piano chords that are being played, like those, and then it just cuts off, especially used more so in the end of the track. I really like that because, one, it builds suspense, it builds tension, and I couldn't remember where. I couldn't remember who, I should say. But either Pink Floyd or Queen. No. I literally just remembered what I was trying to think of. That's what Yes used in Roundabout, with that opening chord, and it rises up and then it cuts to How. They're doing a similar thing here, which I'm pretty sure is they have a piano or an electronic keyboard, one of the two. Hear me out. They started off on 0 volume, hit the chord, then as the chord is sustained, slowly raise up that volume, and then cut it back down immediately. That's why that volume rises from that sustained note already, and then it cuts back off. I'm taking a guess there. I think so. I'm not 100% sure. But looking at the amount of Moogs and synthesizers and synths and pianos and Mellotron, guitar even, that are being used here, it's just like mind-boggling to me. There's just so many key-based instruments that are going on here, and yet it obviously doesn't sound cluttered because they're masters of composition and how they put it all together, once again lending a huge hand to the production end of things. So I think that this was really cool. I'm just going to see if there's any interesting notes about this particular track. It says that the A side of the LP, of course, Rubicon Part 1, ebbs and flows through tense washes of echo and mellotron choirs as primitive sequencer lines bubble to the surface. Okay, I actually forgot to mention that. At one point, I want to say in the middle, you do have those, I think it was only played maybe 2 or a few times. Those little voices of mellotron that actually sound like voices. There's mellotron throughout, but there is a specific point in the middle or the early section that, I think in the culmination, the first half, that sounds and emulates the human voice. I really like that. Of course, that's the choir setting being used there. It says, I'm just reading some of the comments about reviews from critics. From Contemporary Reviews, Chris Salowitz of NME wrote that a touch more electronically sophisticated than Phaedra. Perhaps, and the technological and massed choir that floods out the speakers a couple of minutes into part 2. Haven't heard that one yet, so I can't say, so I'm going to skip that. Salowitz surmised the group as being so thoroughly frustrating because there's nothing you come across which you find you can actively dislike. On the other hand, there really does appear to be little there for the moment which warrants more than a lukewarm, vague affection that, broken down, would seem close to some nebulous sympathy. A bunch of fancy words that he's just saying that he didn't really care for it. It's a fancy way of saying, I give you an A for effort, but I'm not really gonna listen to this again. That's what he's saying. I didn't say it, he said it, because I would listen to this again. I listened to Phaedra I want to say a month and a half ago. I put it on while I was at work, and I was like, let's just listen to Phaedra again. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought of the first track of the album of Rubicon Part 1. Let me know those thoughts in the comments below. You can follow me on Twitter if you so enjoy occasional and random tweets about random things. You can also support the channel and myself on Patreon if you'd like to help out financially, but otherwise, before I leave, just like the video before you go. Subscribe if you want to do that, but otherwise, come back tomorrow. You never know what we're going to do, but we're going to do something fun. Hope you'll be there. Thank you again. And I'll see you later, guys.